So let me talk a little bit about the 4 stages that we're gonna wrap the presentation around today. You may recognize these. The 4 stages are not something new that I've developed, although I have a particular spin on them that I like to use. But this really comes from the AIDA model, AIDA, as we'll see, which I'll show you here. It starts with awareness, which if people aren't aware that you exist, or in this case that your website exists, then obviously they can't move any further in the buying process. Once they're aware of you, then you've still got to generate some interest. You've got to get them to your website and get them to your website at a point when they're ready to make a purchase, to enroll, for example. But then interest by itself is not enough. You've also got to take them from merely being interested to being engaged with you. And in the traditional AIDA model, this is called desire or various other deep words. But I call it engagement. This is things like having online videos, having the kind of information on your site that people need so that they can make the decision to enroll if they're at that point. And then the last piece is I call conversion, and again in the traditional model it's called action. This is the point where I might have every intention of enrolling in your class through your website, but if I can't figure out how to use your shopping cart, or if I don't trust you or I don't trust the checkout process, you might lose my enrollment even at that point. So this is the typical process that people move through, the psychological process that people move through, becoming aware of you, becoming interested in what you have, really beginning to engage with you. And we'll talk about some unique ways that you can do that online, and then eventually converting or enrolling. Okay? Here's another way to think about this. You can also think about it as this blue blank slide representing the world out there, all of your prospective students. And then you can think about there being this subset of those who are aware of you. Now, obviously, you want this awareness circle to be as large as you possibly can. You'll never hit everyone, but you want broad awareness of your offerings. And then there's going to be a subset of those people who are aware of you that then become interested, or that are interested at any given time in your products. And there's going to be a subset of those people who are engaging with you, who are engaging your website to that point, and then again a subset that are going to be converting. So the goal of everything we're going to talk about today is that we're trying to make each one of these concentric circles as large as possible. More awareness, more interest, more engagement, and obviously more enrollments as conversions at the end. Now, each of these stages will have a goal, and I'm going to propose or suggest a goal for each of these stages the way that I think about it. With awareness, your goal is really to get out there. It's just awareness is a numbers game. So running pay-per-click ads and getting 1 million impressions a week is not unreasonable for a large-scale program. And that's 1 million people who've at least been looking at a web page where your ad has displayed. Okay? And so awareness is just as many times as possible to reach as many people as you possibly can. And then, to me, the interest stage is getting them from the point where they either saw your website on a search results listing or got an email from you or in some way became aware of you to the point where they're interested enough that they're going to visit your website. And then once they get to your site, you got to keep them there. You got to keep them there long enough to engage, to get them engaged. Obviously, the point of engagement is this is to create that desire. This is to make people want to enroll in your program. You do that by instilling confidence and by making, in some cases, offers, or by showing people the information that they need to make this decision. And then, obviously, conversion. Your goal there is to generate either enrollments or leads, and we'll talk about the difference between those. Not all conversions end up being enrollments in your program. So these are the goals that I'm going to put out there for each one of these stages, and then we're going to talk about some approaches that you may take to try to achieve each one of these goals. Now, let's first talk about the idea of going back to the concept that this is a process that we're moving people through. What happens when one of these stages breaks down? If even one of these 4 stages is a weakness of your website, then what's going to happen is you're going to have trouble moving people to the next stage. And I found this great image of a beautiful bridge that obviously someone has spent a large amount of money and time building, but there's a chunk missing. And with that chunk missing, essentially the entire bridge then becomes useless. That's not quite the case with online marketing. This is certainly an extreme example, but this is the way that I think about this process, is that if I'm doing all of this awareness building, for example, through pay-per-click marketing and search engine optimization and email marketing, and yet I don't have mechanisms to engage people on my website, well, the process breaks down and my eventual conversions or enrollments are going to be much lower than they would be if I had effective components in place throughout the 4 stages. So with awareness, if you've got a chunk of your bridge missing, people are not even going to know that you exist. Or when they're out there doing searches, and your search results aren't coming up, they may be looking for you specifically, but aren't able to find you or the type of programs you're offering even when they're looking. And this is especially important if people are doing called geographically specific searches. So if I'm, for instance, in Atlanta running a continuing education program and someone does a search for Atlanta continuing education, or a more specific term like Atlanta project management training, I'd better have my website showing up either through what we call organic listings, which are kind of the normal search result listings on search engines, or through an ad if the organic listings aren't happening. So we've got to make sure that people can find us when they're trying to find us. Now, if people find us, or let's say that they do a search and we do come up, the next thing we've got to do is we've got to get them interested. And very often the interest is created through content, through ad content, or through what it says in your search results listings, or what it says in emails that you're sending out to people through email marketing, something like that. So the goal, again, of interest is to get people to your site and to keep them there. So it's not enough just to get them to your site if they then leave immediately. So if you're not doing a good job on the interest stage, what's happening is that people are aware of you, but they're not coming to your site, or else they're getting there, not seeing what they want, and they're leaving. Third, the engagement stage. If this isn't working well, then what's happening is people are getting to your site, they're interested, but then you're not doing what it takes to make them feel confident in your ability to deliver what you're promising, or you're not giving them enough information to make an educated decision. For example, you might have a short course description online, but if you're not sharing with people learning objectives or a biography of the instructor, or comments from past students, those are examples of even things like video clips, maybe a video introduction from an instructor. Those are things that I would consider to be engagement items, and those are the things that create that desire, to make people feel like, yes, I've got to do this. I need to take this class. And then lastly, if we're lacking in the conversion side, and I see this so often, especially with continuing education sites, which very often are to some degree at the mercy of either a third-party registration system or, which usually even worse, a university registration system that's not really built for continuing education, particularly. Everything else can be working fine, but then the whole system can break down at this conversion spot. When people are ready to enroll, if your online registration process or other types of online conversion tools don't make it easy for students to do this, they're going to leave. And if you may have noticed that there was a theme that in each one of these stages, if the interest doesn't work, they leave your site. If the engagement's not there, they leave your site. If the conversion is difficult for people or confusing for people, they leave your site. And all of the other efforts then become wasted.